Hello and welcome to Angling Escapades, and we are just going to do, this is just a sort of a short weekly vlog today, just to sort of catch up. We launched our stunning stick float video last week, which was a longer video. Had a great response to that. Thank you for all the wonderful comments and feedback. People seem to generally enjoy the whole sort of program of what it was, even though it was, it was a hard day weather-wise. It was hard to film, but I think we got the story across. And had great feedback, so thanks for that. What I want to do today though is just talk about a few short subjects, things going on. I'm actually out pike fishing. I've got a pike rod out. This is something I love doing. I'm just messing around today because I wanted to do a vlog. The river's not perfect for pike. We actually should have been guiding today, but I cancelled it because the river's just still a bit big and I didn't feel like I could really give a good day, so we've postponed to next week when the river, looking at the forecast, there's no more rain, the river's going to drop further, clear out a little bit and be better for pike fishing. So I've just chucked a pike rod out there. I've got a half a mackerel out there. This is what I love. When I come piking, this is what I love. I'll show you this now, right? When I pike fish, I always fish with a float. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. I don't know whether you can see it or not. Where is it? There. You see that big old bung there? And this is what I love about pike fishing. You can sit here for hours watching that, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it'll just bob. And as a pike picks up your bait, and suddenly you're tuned in and completely engaged in that float, and what's about to ensue. Usually, hopefully, a strike and a decent fish. So yeah, that's why I like. It's such a sociable way of fishing as well. Monty's over here. Let's show you Monty. He's digging holes again. Monty started digging holes a couple of years ago. I don't quite know what he thinks he's going to find. He's never found anything yet, but you don't stop him. It's a bit simple, really. Anyway, so that's why I'm out pike fishing. I say I can do my little vlog, and also, got a chance to fish as well. So this isn't a pike vlog. It's not a pike video, okay? Before people get bored, because I have found that when I've done pike videos in the past, I've done some really good ones where I've caught like 5 or 6 pike, and no one's interested, doesn't get the view. So I don't know whether pike fishing just doesn't interest people or what, but hey, listen, if we catch one, we'll show you. But the main thing is today I just want to talk about a few things that have gone on. So this week on the river, first of all, I must take the temperature, because as you remember, if you watched Stunning Stick Float, I forgot to change the batteries on the thermometer and wasn't able to give you a temperature reading. So I'm going to do that now. I've got fresh batteries in here. Turn it on first. There we go. That in there. Well, there you go. That's showing exactly 7 degrees. You see on there, 7 degrees. Well, that's pretty good temperature in all fairness. Bear in mind, 2 weekends ago we had that sub-zero Siberian weather, and it was freezing cold, and that will have taken the water temperature down. And while that temperature is dropping, while that water temperature is dropping, it always has a bit of an adverse effect on fishing, especially barbel. Chub not so bad, but barbel certainly will. That sport's slow. So it's been settled now for a while. We had some high water in the week, but it was generally, reasonably mild. It wasn't freezing cold. We have had a frost this week, but it's not sub-zero. There's no snow on the hills or anything like that. So I feel like that water temperature will sort of hold at that now for maybe even a few weeks. Looking at the forecast, we're not due any more rain, and we're not due any sudden depressions of cold weather. And we're not saying no weather front, so I feel like we're probably coming into, before Christmas now, coming into a real good period of settled weather, and that's always fairly key to good fishing. So even like your barbel, I think 7 degree water temperature, steady air temperatures, no frost. I think barbel will feed. Yes, right, they're not going to go mad like they do in the summer, where they'll come out searching and what have you and that, but they will feed each day, and you just need to be in the right areas and fishing in the right way. And actually next week I think I'm going to go out and do a winter barbel fishing video, because I think there is a way to do it. There's a right way, and I think a lot of people enjoy their barbel fishing for the summer, and it's very aggressive and fishing with 2 rods, and you know, sort of big baits and that sort of thing, and the rod's hooping over and they can sit in a chair and just enjoy it. In the winter it's a lot more, you're having to use more maggot, you're having to be a lot more active. It's no good just chucking out a feeder full of maggots and leaving it for 15 minutes. You've got to keep casting, keep feeding, get those trails of bait, things like that. And I feel like there is a way to do it. That's why in the winter I would choose generally not to sit on a chair so much. If I was fishing with maggots now, I tend to sit on a seat box so I can keep casting, keep myself upright and keep busy. And there's no two ways about it. That is the best way to barbel success in the winter. So I think I'm going to do that next week, hopefully. So keep an eye out for that one for me. What else is going on? So we had a rise this week, quite a big rise. So the river was up for the first 3 days. We had to cancel our guiding, which is always unfortunate, but it's the nature of the beast on this river at this time of year, and I like those fresh influxes of water. It keeps everything moving, keeps the fish moving around, and you know when it does drop right that the fish is going to be good. So one of those, but it's been a high river. Cormorant going past there. Look. I was very worried about Belmont earlier on in the month. There was so many cormorants on there. They're still there, but not in the same numbers. There seems to be 2 or 3 that are hunting each day, morning and night, but while they're fishing, don't seem to be too much of a problem. And from what I'm seeing at the moment, it's sustainable. They're taking some big fish, and it's you know, it's heartbreaking to see, but ultimately there's a lot of fish there as well. So as much as I don't want to see them there at all, and I wish we could just shoot them, but ultimately at the moment I feel like it's not getting out of control, but they are there and they are eating fish. In fact, I'll put up a little video that I took last week of them taking it with a big perch. It's quite frightening, really. So that's been like sort of the week so far. So there's not been much happening this week, really. I did, which is always conducive with people having too much time in their hands, and the internet is alive with all kinds of things. And I sort of fell into that trap this week, and I actually had a bit of an interesting sort of interaction with people on Twitter of all places. Now, anybody who does social media, Facebook and Instagram, they're all nice and everything. You know, that's where most of our stuff goes, and YouTube, obviously, like this. But Twitter can be a bit, I tend to stay off it really, because it can be a bit volatile. But people choose that outlet for their stuff, and one of which is Matt Hayes. Now, Matt obviously is someone that all of us have watched at some point, and he's a great TV presenter, made great fishing shows, a very natural sort of a guy, and someone who I really like, and I've got a lot of respect for. Matt does most of his sort of social media on Twitter, and I follow him because he's very interesting, and like I say, someone I respect. But he put a post up in the week and he was talking about salmon. You know, salmon is Matt's big thing now. Matt moved to Norway. He runs a fishing lodge. He owns a fishing lodge, which he runs with his wife, and looks fantastic in all fairness. But so salmon is a massive part of Matt's world, and he put a thing up and he was basically saying that about salmon farms, you know, commercial salmon farms, how bad they are for the natural salmon stock, which is true. You know, there's no two ways about it. All the stuff that goes into making these salmon farms, the waste from it, and that has a detrimental effect on the water balance and different things like that, and you know, affects the native salmon. But what he was saying was that basically Chris Packham had come out and against this plans for an expansion of a farm, and he was basically saying he was happy to stand alongside Chris Packham to sort of see, you know, this not happen, which is all well and good. You know, it's sometimes it is better together and whatever, you know. But as people will know, as I'm always preaching, I've got a real problem with some of the people we align ourselves to as anglers, because ultimately there's a lot of people, I'm not saying Chris Packham is one of them, but I think there's a lot of people that follow the likes of Chris Packham who are very animal rights, very just basically anti anything that involves sport around animals. And for me, they're dangerous people to be around. And I just said to Matt, put a post up about it, and I just said I disagree. I don't think it's a good idea. And I also mentioned the fact that a lot of the Save the Wye sort of campaign is run by people who are of that persuasion, if you like. And I, in all fairness, opened up a bit of a can of worms and got a lot of stick for it. Matt took me to task on it, and I just had to remind Matt of, just because he you know, felt I didn't know I was talking about salmon. I had to remind him that I've caught plenty of salmon, and I fish for salmon, as most of you know, a lot. And we sort of, this debate sort of happened. It was all good, as ever with these things on social media. Some people are just incapable of debating properly or talking properly, so they have to turn to insults I always say when you start insulting people, you've lost the argument. You lose it. And there was a little bit of that. But what it reminded me of, and I had a real good dialogue with Matt, and we spoke privately as well. And my respect is not weighing for him. We differ in our opinions. However, he being the sort of person he is, was able to say, "You're the first person I've heard say that. I'm interested. I don't believe it, but I'm interested." And he wanted to hear my views and things like that. And that's really good. I love debate like that. That's how it should be. Whether you agree with someone, disagree, it doesn't get personal. You just talk. But what did come out of it, and this is something that I've noticed on this river in particular, basically because of salmon. I've fished and learnt of some of the best gillies in the world on this river. People, just legends, the Coblins of the world. People, Frank Bettenberg, people like that. Bailiffs, gillies, just people who just knew salmon. Their lives were salmon, and they just knew it. And they know, there was so much to learn. And when they talk, I listen. And that's always been the way. But what I've noticed is when I talk to some of these old gillies, and that, now there's an air of sadness about them, about the state of the river, the fact there's no salmon. But there's an acceptance. There's a sadness, but an acceptance, because they know they had the best years, and they can, as sad as they are, at least they can say they experienced it. And they actually feel sorry for us for the fact that we're scraping around for maybe one salmon a year or something like that. But so you get it, and I love talking to them. I had a lovely interaction with one of the NRW bailiffs, Paul, earlier on in the year, and we talked for hours, and he was telling me about all these different ways to catch salmon, and telling me how he did it, and give me all these, and I was just completely transfixed by what he was saying. But after it, you look at it and go, we've just spent 2 hours, he's telling me all these wonderful tricks to catch salmon on methods that I can no longer use for fish that are no longer here. And it's just crazy, but I have got so much time for those guys. But what I've noticed is there is a little contingent of people who are still holding out, their lives are still revolving around salmon, and it's just not viable on this river anymore. You can't, the gillies, there's probably you can count the gillies on this river on one hand probably, and like full-time gillies, and it's just not, sustainable anymore. But I've noticed there's a few that are they've got a real sort of attitude about them. They've got a real problem with anybody. So they've seen these salmon disappear, all very sad, but then someone offers an alternative argument and they're all over it, because they won't, it's quite simple. If you talk to a barbel angler, the majority will probably say this is a brilliant river, one of the best in the country. If you talk to a match angler, they'll say this is the best river in the country. If you talk to a salmon angler, they'll say it's a desperate picture, it's just polluted, because they've seen their quarry, they've seen them disappear, and you can understand that, but they judge everything on the salmon alone. And as we showed from the graph that I showed you on a previous vlog, that the salmon dropped off a cliff in the 80s. Okay, it's not about the expansion of poultry units. It couldn't have been, because they weren't even here then. So that argument, but they're happy to jump in on it, and they jump in and they'll join forces with anyone who will tell the world that the Wye's dead, because that's all they see. They don't see what I see on a daily basis when I'm sat here catching barbel, when I'm with guests and what have you, and what we see daily. And it's quite, they've got quite a bit of bitterness about them, and it's sad, but ultimately I understand where it comes from. But obviously I then get, I'm then the one they want to attack, because I'm daring to say something different. And as I've said before, and I know I'm stuck record, it's not about denying pollution. We don't want, there's things going in these rivers we don't want. But at the end of the day, the rivers have been lower in the summer for multiple years now, and they've been higher in the winter. We've had record floods and record droughts all in the same 12-month period. And you can't tell me that the climate hasn't changed. So I see that as a massive threat to our rivers. Those dry summers, they suffocate everything. But they won't have that as an excuse. It's all about pollution. And of course I get it thrown at me. They say, oh well, you're bound to say that the river's healthy because you're bringing guests to the river. And as I remind people, I'm trying to attract people to the river, but it's not a very good business model to attract people to something that is polluted and dead, because that business model doesn't last long. I literally just report real-time facts, what I see, and I see a lot of health, and I see species that are thriving. We've got a chub explosion on the river. There is no two ways about it. It's not even up for question. so something doesn't add up. But they throw these things at me, and then they try and sort of disparage me by saying I know nothing about salmon fishing. Well, you know, as I say, I've sort of spent time with the absolute best gillies on this river. I've spent time with gillies in Scotland, and I know, you know, my introduction to fishing 44 years ago, when this river was still a top salmon river, was salmon fishing. So they try and throw that at me, and then they just got a real bitterness to them. And these are silly people. These are people who they've sort of they do stupid things. They like sort of invent fish. You try and claim the first fish of the season, and they invent a stupid fish like caught at 7 a.m. on March the 3rd on the opening day of the season. It's just pathetic. And there was one guy who was early on in the year, he was claiming he'd caught seven spring salmon and was lauding it up about how many, you know, his top rod on the river and all this lot. And then the next thing, we had one algal bloom, and next thing he was telling all and sundry, and he was on the radio telling everyone that the river's dead and died, and I think he just caught 7 spring salmon, which is, like, in current circumstances, that's incredible. But as soon as you couldn't fish for a day because of an algal bloom, oh, it's the river's polluted and dead, and they're just stupid people. I'm sorry, they are just, and they try and have a go at me, and I don't get involved with them because they're just not worth it. But it's all a bit, and it gets unsavoury, and people can't just debate. And it's you know, and all I do is I just tell people what I find, and that's all I'll do, and I'll keep doing. And me little films of the minnows feeding and what have you, because there's such a large contingent of people out there who just don't realise it, because they just believe what they read, and they think it's dead. So anyway, so that's my little rant. I've had a bit of a you know, a bit of an argument. What I did add was I had a real positive interaction with Matt Hayes, who I still hold with such high regard, and I'm looking forward to hopefully talking to him again at some point, because he's a clever guy and someone who I genuinely respect. So yeah, you know, debate's good, but when people start throwing insults, it's like you've got to rise above it, and that's what I'm doing. I'm on the river doing what I do. Delivering fishing content and just loving where we live and where I work. One thing that did come up in the debate about the state of the Wye, and Matt Hayes brought this up, and he's not the first person I've heard use it. They say when you present them with the evidence of the record catches we've caught in Hereford Town Centre, and you know, the amounts of chub in the river and what have you, and that, they say that is because the river is not producing enough natural food, so the fish flock to where the bait goes in, which I just can't fathom how they get to that assumption, because where we're sat here on the upper river, up until about from June till about the upper end of September, there's dace everywhere up here. There's loads of dace and small chublets and what have you. Now you don't see one. You won't catch one anytime now until next summer. So they're here in the summer, but they're there in the winter. So, but this isn't a heavily fish stretch of river. There's not loads of bait going in up here, but they're happy to live from, you know, the start of the season, probably from spawning time. They come in to spawn. They're happy to live here all through the summer, when fish are feeding up, and then come the winter they're going to Hereford, because that's where all the bait's going in. It just doesn't ring true. It doesn't add up, and I'm sorry, I just don't buy that argument. And I've heard it. Say Matt's the first angler I've heard use it, but I've heard it from some of the campaign groups when you sort of present them with the evidence of record catches and that. It's just nonsense. So I just don't buy that argument. It just doesn't make sense, you know. If only it was that easy, that basically wherever you threw bait, that's where the fish would be. You know, as I've shown on my videos earlier on in the year, I did a lot of underwater stuff and pulled up with. There's loads of natural food. If it wasn't natural food, you wouldn't have the hatches of flies that we get. It's too easy just to say, oh yeah, no, it's not there. That's why you're catching record catches, because the rivers, you know, all the insect life, all the invertebrates have all been killed, have all died off. So unless you're putting maggots in, you're not, you know, that's the only reason they're there. So, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it at all. So, what about prospects for the weeks ahead? So, like we said, we've got water temperature of 7 degrees, so that's plenty warm enough to catch all species. Obviously it's not going to be like saying, barbel calling at the rod, but fish will open their mouths and that, so that's good. And I believe that, I say this we've got a spell of settled weather now, odd bit of rain here and there, but nothing that's going to bring the river up drastically, so great time to be out fishing. And I say, look, so as this river drops away and clears out now, chub are going to become the dominant species, and whether you choose to do that, I love coming out to places like this where you're in the wilds, just simple, fishing with maggots and wagglers and stick floats and stuff like that. No need for any ground bait or anything like that. Just 3 or 4 pints of maggots, and you can have a brilliant day. And even if it's really cold, you can catch grayling and bits and bobs. So that's definitely on the cards over the next week or so. I mean, we're heading into Christmas, so people are going to have lots of time. Hopefully, have lots of time on their hands, time off work, and get out. And it looks like it's not going to, we're not going to be washed off or anything. So yeah, you can sort of take your pick. The pike fishing is going to, like I say, I prefer it clearer for the pike. You can catch them in coloured water, but I just find they like it. It's nice to have a visual bait. And so I'd expect, the pike fishing to be good. Obviously, Hereford Town Centre, just fill your boots if you can get on a peg. I was there, say the other week when I was there, it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was dark, and they're already on the pegs. People want to experience that, and don't let that put you off, because as I say, it doesn't matter if every peg's taken, you just go on the next one above or whatever, and you'll catch fish as long as there's a continuous line of anglers. The fish will sort of spread out. But yeah, and what's been really encouraging is the roach fishing has continued. Whilst there's been colour in the river, the roach fishing has been really good, because they do have a tendency this time of year just to shut up shop. They don't go anywhere, they just stop feeding. But at the moment they're feeding well, so like I say, Hereford Town Centre is just place to be if you want to guarantee a day's fishing. But like I say, get out wherever you fish on this river, and barbel as well. Head for the slower, deeper stretches. The barbel will be sat this time of year more on silt and clay. So those are the sort of places to head. And I say I'd fish maggots and a bit of hemp. If you're going on a sort of a last minute decision, if you suddenly get some time and you want to go out fishing, bread is going to catch you a lot of fish at this time of year, whether it be bread on float bread flake on float for the chub, or liquidized bread in a feeder, all those things, or little bread punches for roach. You don't have to have maggots and casters and things like that. You can go and have a very decent day's fishing with just simple bit of bread, rubbed as well. There's plenty of perch to be caught around. So I just think it's a really good time. I think we're going to have it just right for when people are on holiday and maybe got a bit of time to go fishing. I think the river's going to be good. So definitely, if you get a chance, get out, choose your species, choose your methods, and go and enjoy it. Well, I think we're about done here now. Spectacular blank. Not really spectacular, I didn't really expect to catch really. The river could do with another foot off it for the pike certainly, but it's coming right. If you've got a bait in the water, you've got a chance. Ultimately, I can think of worse places to sit and blank. That sunset.